Hi folks, welcome back to the Tabletop's Edge. Today in our World in Flames Days of Decision combined campaign game, we are approaching the summer of 1939. We see the Japanese offensive into China continues to grind its way rather slowly forward. They haven't managed to put an inordinate amount of pressure on the Chinese so far, as the Chinese have managed to sort of contain things, although they have been slowly pushed back by the Japanese. The Japanese really haven't gained all that much, considering they've been in the country now for a little over a year, I believe. So we'll see if the Japanese can start to get some forward momentum rolling here, particularly with the Chinese making the decision for a strategic withdrawal from the eastern part of the country a couple months ago. Over in Spain, it's pretty much do or die time for Franco's nationalists, because there are sizable reinforcements for the Republicans arriving in July and August, which gives them just this May-June turn to take advantage of the numerical superiority they have right now. Even though it's a fairly slim superiority, it is certainly as good as it's going to get for them for the foreseeable future. So the question is, can the nationalists take advantage of what should be good weather and hopefully a long turn for them in Spain to really break the back of Republican resistance? Well, there's only one way to find out, so let's dive right in and see what happens. Well, as usual, money is very tight for all of the major powers. In fact, only the United States, the Commonwealth, and Germany are sitting at zero. The other 5 major powers are all in a deficit. Now, most of them, or at least a large number of them, have done a gear up. In the case of China, Japan, and Italy, it's the second gear up of the game so far, which is one reason why they're so far in debt. Italy is the poorest right now, sitting at -9. That only gives her about 6 to spend before she maxes out her credit limit at -15. Next comes China at -6, then Japan sitting at -5, Russia is -2, and France at -1. Now, despite the lack of funds, we actually have a fair number of major powers bidding for a political option this turn, which should indicate that, at least for many of the major powers, they sense the approach of a large conflict, and they're trying to get as much of their political activity done now in anticipation of the shooting war breaking out in the not too distant future. We have 4 major powers actually bidding. Those are Germany, Italy, the Commonwealth, and the United States. Now, of those, the United States actually bid 3. The other 3 powers only bid 1. Now, when we take into account the modifiers for the initiative position, as well as the fact that the United States bid last turn but did not have an opportunity to play that option, she's going to get a couple of bonus bid points as well. And what we find is that the 3 that the U.S. bid is going to be added to the +2 here for their initiative position, and the +2 bonus bids, giving them a grand total of 7, which for the first time all game is going to place the United States in the first initiative position. Now, following that, both Germany and Italy bid 1, and you can see they're both sitting at +3 here, which gives them a tied result of a 4 for a total bid. Now, Germany's political effectiveness is greater than Italy, so that's going to break that time, put Germany in second and Italy in third. And then bringing up the last of the actual bidding powers is the Commonwealth, which bid 1, gets +1 for its bid modifier for a grand total of 2, placing them in 4th position. Now, among the 4 powers that did not bid, Japan with 0 and +4 is going to slide here to 5th. Following her, we have, looks like China is going to be a 2. And then we've got France with a +1, and then the Soviets remain in 8th down here with 0. So we have the first last card adjacent here, and then the last of the bidders is the Commonwealth. And we're about to find out what exactly it was that the United States wanted to get done so desperately that she was able, or she was willing to bid 3 for that. So on to the United States political option. Well, here we see what the United States was so eager to make sure got done this turn, and that is U.S. option 2, gear up. She was eligible to gear up as of January, February 1939. So here we are in May, June. She's already missed out on 2 turns of increased production and did not want to see that slide yet another turn. You can see the cost for this is pretty big. It's 12. I believe that's the most expensive of any of the major powers gear up options. But again, the United States is the nation that can most afford that. Now, when we add this to the 3 that she bid this turn for initiative position, that's going to take her from 0 down to a deficit of minus 15, which appears substantial, but as you'll see in a moment, it's not going to take that long for the U.S. to dig themselves out of that hole. We've got a number of minor countries that this is going to affect both positively and negatively. And you can see the U.S. entry effect is a plus 11. I know it may sound a little weird that there's a U.S. entry effect for something that the United States does, but effectively you do keep track of the U.S. entry level for the United States because that entry level is used in the formulas to determine the effective entry levels against the other major powers. So the way it works is essentially every positive U.S. entry modifier for a U.S. entry option effectively lowers the U.S. entry level against another major power like Germany or Italy or Japan. So as the United States begins to become politically active and start doing various political options, it's going to, in many cases, delay or slow down their entry into the war. Now, with this particular option, you can see it's going to increase by 1 level. That's going to take their production multiple from 1/20th up to 1/4. So they've just bumped up their production effectively 5 times. And what this is going to result in is probably somewhere around 9 or 10 build points for the United States, as opposed to just the 3 build points she's had available each turn so far. So the United States seeing a rather dramatic increase in her production. This is one reason why it's not going to take them very long to dig out from underneath this minus 15 debt. And once they have, it's going to really unleash their productive capacities as far as building up their military. So definitely not a welcome sign for the fascists or even the communists as far as overall game victory goes. But I'm sure the Commonwealth and France are very pleased to see this development. Let me go ahead and record the minor country modifications here, and then the United States will, what is rather rare, get an opportunity to activate one of the minor countries on the map. So we'll head over to the maps and see what they decide to do. Perhaps not surprisingly, most of the minor country reaction came from Central and South America here. The Western Hemisphere obviously a little more influenced by what the United States does. Curiously, both Portugal and the Netherlands did not like the U.S. gear up, and I can only surmise that's probably because of their Pacific possessions. Perhaps they perceive a U.S. gear up as making a general Pacific war much more likely, and therefore presents a greater danger to their possessions out in Asia. Now, as you can see here in South America, Argentina is just a veritable hotbed of international intrigue. We have control markers from no less than 5 of the major powers, all currently located in Argentina. And I think what the United States is going to do is they've got a reasonably favorable setup here in Brazil with +2 influence combined with -2 for the Japanese. So I think the United States is going to go ahead and activate Brazil, and we'll head over to the status display. We'll implement these control markers, resolve that, see where the Brazil marker ends up, and then we'll roll to see if the United States ends the political phase. On the political display, you can see the Brazil country marker located here in the neutral zone, quite a ways from the communists over here, but roughly in the middle here between the fascists and Democrats. We have our 2 control markers. It doesn't look like there's going to be much difference in the order in which we resolve these. So with the -2 Japanese, that's going to push the marker away from Japan here. And then with the +2 for the American influence, looks like they're going to come up just short here. It's not going to be able to cross this barrier here because it's not allied with the United States. It's not within the Democrat ideology as of yet. There's this +1 to get across this barrier. So it would require 3 actually to move Brazil into the Democrat ideology. So a little miscalculation on the part of the U.S. there. They should have held out a little bit longer and gotten 1 additional influence, which would have been enough to push Brazil into the ideology here, and actually probably into the hex right here where China is right now. So a little bit of a miscalculation on the part of the United States throws away an opportunity there, but at least Brazil is slowly drifting in the right direction as far as the Democrats are concerned. With that, the only thing we have to do is roll the die to see if the Americans end the political phase. And since this is the first political option that has been played, there is no modifier to the die roll. So anything but a 1 and a 10 is as far as you can get from a 1, which means we're going to slide down, and Germany now is on the clock, as it were, for her political option. Well, Germany's very busy 1939 continues in May, June with German option 3 treaty. She is going to be offering a level 1 treaty to Italy. And as you can see here, there's a money cost of 4, only if it's successful. This is, again, just to remind you, the treaties are offered between countries. It requires the target country, the partner country, to play their option 0F, I believe it is. It's agree to a proposal. So we're going to have to wait to see if Italy has an opportunity to respond to the treaty proposal, and if so, in an affirmative manner. If that happens, then we'll go ahead and have Germany pay the 4, and we will implement it's going to be the treaty chart plus these additional specific modifiers for various minor countries, and then the U.S. entry effect, again, only takes place if it's successful, and so we're not even going to activate a minor country. We'll just skip right to the die roll to see if Germany ends the turn, which would not be good for either her or Italy in this case. Now, the United States did play 1 option previously, so we're going to have a -1 from this die roll, a 2 or less, and we have a problem. The 4, however, becomes a 3. That is greater than 1, which means the political phase does continue, and the very next country is indeed Italy. And Italy is going to, of course, respond to the German treaty offer by playing option 0F here, agree to a proposal. This is going to cost the Italians no money, fortunately for them. It's also going to have no minor country effects or U.S. entry effects, because that's all baked into the original German treaty proposal. So what we'll do is go ahead and have Germany pay her 4, and then I will go ahead and record the U.S. entry effect, which is +4, which not all that great. And then we'll see how the minor countries around the globe react to this. And at that point, we'll go ahead and activate a minor country. So we'll pick up over on the map board in just a moment. Well, the reaction to the signing of the German-Italian level 1 treaty was pretty muted across the globe. As far as Europe goes, Germany didn't really gain much in the way of influence. The most significant, perhaps, is a +1 that she picked up in Finland up there, which ties in nicely with her Scandinavian focus. However, that +1 isn't going to be quite enough to move the Finns a little closer to her yet. So it's a nice pickup for them, but they're going to have to wait and let that accumulate a little more before they're able to reap any real benefits from it. And most of the other countries out there, the only one that has a considerable German positive influence in it right now is Hungary, way over here. But Hungary is already allied and stacked in Germany's hex, so there's really no need for the Germans to activate Hungary. I think what they're going to do is probably go up here to Ireland. There's a number of control markers, as you can see, up there for the various major powers, and they are... It's probably not a great situation for the fascists, but there are a couple of real big negative influence numbers up there for the Democrats. So Germany's going to activate Ireland, and we'll see how all of these play out over on the status display. We can see Ireland's marker located here just off of the center point of the neutral zone. We had a grand total of 5 control markers from major powers located in Ireland. We had -5 for France, +5 for the United States, +3 for Germany, +3 for the Soviet Union, and -6 for the Commonwealth. And I think we'll just go ahead. I don't think this is going to make a big difference in the order in which we resolve these. So we'll just start here with the Commonwealth with the -6. That's going to move them 3 hexes, which is quite a bit away from the Commonwealth, and slide these around here. Next up, let's go ahead and we'll resolve the -5 here for the French. We'll get the Democrats all out of the way. That is going to push them, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's going to go here and then here. And then with the United States, that's probably going to undo what the French 5 just did, because it will draw them back here towards the US. We'll go with the 3 for the Soviets is going to move Ireland here, and the extra 1 is wasted. And then that German 3 is probably going to offset that as well. That's going to bring them back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 5 or 5. So the Germans go ahead and move Ireland here. So the net effect of all of that really was just to slide the Irish 3 hexes further away from the Democrats up there. They are balanced right in between both the communists here and the fascists. Now, one of the things you'll notice with a lot of political activity like we've been seeing so far over the last few turns, a lot of minor countries are getting activated, which means a lot of the control markers, a lot of the influence that's been built up in those countries is being expended. And it doesn't leave a lot of good options now at this point for countries that are looking to move minor countries. Now, if you want to just kind of keep the countries where they are, you can select them, and there's not enough influence in there to get them to budge, which is nice. But again, normally, or in a lot of the days of decision games, you'll see political activity sort of come and go in spurts, where countries have either saved up or they've got something they're really wanting to do, and they'll rattle off a number of options in a few turns, and then they'll kind of sit back and try and rebuild their cash reserves, or they'll focus a little bit more on building up their military, as well as trying to let the influence build up in the countries that they're hoping to target, and then go in and start doing political options again and activating those countries and getting them to move here on the chart. Because it is rather difficult, I think, as you've been seeing over the course of the game so far, to get the minor countries to move, which I don't really have a problem with, because, again, after all, historically speaking, in the war, vast majority of the minor countries remained neutral, certainly in the lead up and outbreak of the war, but then during the war itself, at least until somebody got rid of their neutrality for them. So with that, we just need to roll to see if the turn is going to end after the Italian proposal. And we're looking at, I think, a 3 or less at this point. There's only one nation left to do an option, and that is the Commonwealth. So will they get to do it? And a 7 says yes, they will. So let's see what the Commonwealth was bidding for. Well, the Commonwealth was most unhappy to see the demise of Czechoslovakia over the last couple of turns at the hands of Germany, and is determined to prevent Germany from being able to devour any other minor countries without triggering a general war against France and the Commonwealth. So to that end, she's looking to guarantee as many minor countries around Germany as possible. Now, France has an alliance with Poland, which means if Germany attacks Poland, that will trigger a casus belli on the part of France, and thanks to the treaty, the level 3 treaty that the Commonwealth has with France, that will pretty much guarantee both Western democracies will be at war with Germany. Likewise, France also has an alliance with Belgium. The Netherlands is already guaranteed by the Commonwealth. The game starts with a Commonwealth guarantee of the Netherlands. So most of the immediate surrounding minor countries that Germany can get access to, at least has immediate access to, are covered. The Commonwealth would like to guarantee Norway. However, as you can see here with IPO 12 guarantee, the prerequisite, not only must the minor not be in a civil war or at war or has been declared war on, you cannot play this option on a minor that you already have a guarantee with, and to guarantee a minor, your initiative position must be lower than its willpower. Well, the Commonwealth is sitting in the 4th initiative position this turn, and Norway has a willpower of 3. So they're not eligible to guarantee Norway. Looking around at other potential countries in Europe, Greece becomes the target for this particular option since her willpower is a 6. This also has an added advantage in that the guarantee isn't against a specific country, but it's against any major power that were to go to war with Greece. So this also sort of covers any Italian expansion in the Mediterranean. So for that reason, the Commonwealth is going to guarantee Greece. It's going to cost them just 1 to do so, in addition to the 1 that they bid for the initiative position. You can see for the U.S. entry, we're going to apply half of the treaty chart to the Commonwealth. And then for all of the other minors, we're just going to apply the treaty chart, but it's going to be reduced by 1. So if it were a +2 reaction, normally per the treaty chart, in this case, it'll just be a +1 and so on, down to a minimum of 0. So let me go ahead and record all that, and then the Commonwealth will have to select a minor country to activate. We'll take a look and see if they have any decent options on map. I'm not sure that they do. So we'll pick up here in just a moment over on the main maps. Well, as you might expect, almost all of the minor country reaction was from minor countries located in Eastern Europe. Turkey did not particularly care for it that much, picked up a -2 influence there, along with a -1 here in Bulgaria. But because the treaty chart numbers were 1 less than normal, there was overall a fairly muted response to it. The Commonwealth did pick up +2 influence here in Greece. And as we look around at the minor countries, Commonwealth has negative influence really in the few countries that she has any influence at all on map right now. And if I recall correctly, I think Greece is maybe still in the center of the neutral zone. I don't know that it's been activated or moved off of that central spot. With the +2 that the Commonwealth has, that should be enough to draw Greece at least a little bit towards the democracies. It's also paired up nicely with a -2 towards the Italians, which will maybe give them a little extra bump. So I think for those reasons, we're going to go ahead and have the Commonwealth activate Greece, and we'll head over to the status display to resolve this influence. On the status display here, we can see Greece, in fact, in the center space of the neutral zone. And we have our 3 control markers that we've brought over from the map. You see this first one is a -1 for Germany, which isn't going to be enough to actually move the marker at all. So we'll just get rid of that one. That leaves us a -2 with Italy and a +2 Commonwealth. It doesn't look like there's going to be any difference in the order in which they are resolved. So we'll go ahead and resolve the -2 for Italy. That's going to move Greece 1 hex away from Italy, located here. And then with the +2 Commonwealth influence, that's going to draw Greece a little bit closer there to the Commonwealth and the democracies. So not a bad result really for the Commonwealth this turn. Politically speaking, they do have Greece heading their way. Obviously, they are quite a ways from being able to enter even into the Democrat ideology, much less get stacked with one of the major powers there. If you are curious, there are 3 minor countries that really have not been affected at all yet this turn. It's Argentina, Iraq,
and Norway so far. Other than that, you can see the miners sort of spreading out from the center hex as they react and get influenced by the major powers out there. There's no die roll to end the political phase because the Commonwealth is the last major power that actually bid for something, so that's going to automatically bring the political phase to a close, which means it's time to roll initiative, roll weather, and take a look at the reinforcements that are going to be arriving for everybody this turn. The initiative rolls this turn were actually pretty good for the Democrats. They rolled a 7. Of course, they have a -2, which drops that to a 5, but the fascists only rolled a 4. They are also in the -2 box, which drops them down to a 2, and the communists rolled another 9. So the communists have been rolling very well for initiative so far this year. As a result of that, the communists, really not seeing anything they are hard-pressed to do, have decided to go last, and the Democrats are going to go ahead and decide to go first ahead of the fascists. There's not a lot they can do necessarily. They are a bit on the back foot both in Spain and China, but this will give them the opportunity to perhaps strengthen their position a little bit before the fascists are able to go, but it will also hopefully reduce the number of impulses that the fascists get this turn, where the weather is likely to be good and therefore make this a long turn. So anything the Democrats can do to shorten the opportunities the Japanese and Spanish nationalists will have in Spain to do some damage here is something they're going to take advantage of. So initiative order is going to be Democrats, fascists, and then communists. The weather roll was not too bad. It was a 5. There was a +1 because of the atrocious weather for the last impulse in the March-April turns. That turned it into a 6, which means it's fine weather everywhere except North Monsoon where there's rain. And that is going to have a little bit of an impact, I think, on the campaign in China, at least on the southern end of that front there. So, with mostly good weather everywhere and the Democrats getting the jump on the fascists this turn, let's take a look at the reinforcements that are going to be arriving. We can see here the United States is getting the USS Idaho, which will come on map. The Commonwealth is getting the Prince of Wales in the construction pool, and the Italians are going to add Impero to the construction pool as well. So we still have some big battleships coming out of the circle here. The Italians are going to get their Red Sea flotilla, destroyers and torpedo boats. That's coming on map. The Commonwealth is going to get 2 tanker points. They have, looks like 2 carrier planes that are probably going into the reserve pool for now. They do have some carriers that need some air groups, but I'm not sure if they are ready quite yet to take them. I know one of the carriers was making its way back from the Pacific. I think it has arrived now, but we'll take a look at that. The French also are getting a carrier plane, and I'm going to go ahead and stick that in the reserve pool as well for now. Looks like the Germans, this is the big turn where the Germans receive all their booty from the absorption of Czechoslovakia. So that's going to include 2 infantry corps here. They have a single-seat fighter. It's a Bf-109 E2. They're getting they're getting 3 pilots this turn. I'll go ahead and mark that on the track, but I think that can pretty much guarantee that the 109s here are going to be going on map. In addition to that, they get a Ju-86. I think that's the D model. As you can see, not very good, but at least they didn't pay for it since that was part of the Czechoslovakian spoils. They are also getting an armor corps, which is a pretty good corps, and they're getting the armor HQ Rundstedt. So a really big turn here for the Germans, probably the biggest we've seen for anybody yet this game. The Italians are going to add a pilot. We'll go ahead and, again, I'll mark that on the track as well. And I think they have some aircraft. As a matter of fact, they do. I'm going to go ahead and pull this Airone seaplane out of the reserve pool with those pilots that just arrived. So the Italians will in fact get a pretty decent, especially for this stage of the war, naval air float plane and a Red Sea flotilla. The Japanese add another pilot, and that's going to increase their total. Actually, now they have 6 on the track, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they have not yet been upgrading their carrier planes, of which they're going to get 2 more. They get a nice A6M2 carrier fighter here with a air-to-air of 4. This is the best carrier fighter planes so far we've seen, and for now I'm going to go ahead and just put these into the reserve pool. I know these will be coming out. They're going to be doing a bit of a reorganization here with their carrier groups and upgrading them across the board as best they can. For the Allies, we've got the French and the Commonwealth each picking up 1 pilot. That's probably, the Commonwealth pilot is probably going to be used in a for one of the carrier planes that we just saw arrive. And the French, I don't know if the French have, they've got a carrier plane that just arrived. I don't know if they have their carrier on map yet or not. I'll have to take a look at that, but they really don't have anything else in the reserve pool right now other than carrier planes. So they will probably be looking to build some land aircraft for those pilots to operate. And then finally they do get a nice 105mm artillery unit to help bolster the ground forces. So a pretty sizable chunk of reinforcements this turn. As you can see, the lion's share going to Germany, which is kind of bad news for everybody else. Let me go ahead and get these reinforcements set up, including pulling some stuff out of the reserve pool here and getting it on map, and then we will pick up with the Democrats' first impulse. We're going to begin in Europe, and that means starting pretty much in Spain. The Commonwealth did have a naval move, as you can see out here. The Ark Royal has sailed out with a brand new carrier group. They are intending to join Force H located here at Gibraltar. And you can see some Gladiators have arrived. They were shipped in last turn with this transport, which will be setting sail next impulse, probably back to the UK. And the Commonwealth is just kind of taking their time here. They don't have to pay the oil because this will be the only oil-dependent unit they move this impulse, so they'll sail the transports out next impulse, again, not having to pay for that 1 unit. As for the French really don't have too much to do. They did get that artillery unit, which they've placed in the line there in eastern France. And that brings us to the Republicans. And boy, there's not a lot of good options for them. The 5th Corps here in the mountains really isn't doing any good where it is. It was trying to grab the resource here. It would like to, the Republicans would love to hang on to this resource, but he's not going to be able to reach it, and the Nationalist cavalry will beat them to it. So rather than just having this guy hanging out here, not really doing any good other than somewhat discouraging the Nationalists from pressing up on Madrid from the southwest, I think they're a little more urgent for them to reinforce their main line here in the east. So he is going to come back 1, 2, 3 and pop into this hex here, which the Nationalists did have an opportunity to get a 4-to-1 attack on this hex if they wanted to. So moving the reinforcements in there to strengthen that particular hex, I think, is about the best thing the Republicans can do this turn. They have a decent garrison corps here in Valencia, but for now they're just pretty much playing for time. They do get a couple of nice reinforcements next turn, so that's probably it for the Republicans, at least for now. We'll see what the Nationalists decide to do on their first impulse, but before we get to that, we're going to head over to Asia and see what the Chinese do. Over in Asia, the Chinese are continuing with their withdrawal from the northeast portion of the country. You can see the central portion of their line is starting to thicken up here, where they've got a couple of units in each of those hexes. Now, the stack here is to the north and east of the river line. They do have a reasonable defense strength of 7, but I think the Chinese would prefer to get these troops into, was this Hangzhou, I believe here, Chengzhou, here, but they can't enter there with the communists currently in the city. Now, this is where you'll see one of the differences with playing with Days of Decision 3 versus just a straight WiF is that we now have a 3-sided game, and the communists are not necessarily aligned with the Democrats, and in this case with the communists controlling the Chinese communists here, you can't move all of the Chinese units when it's the Chinese player turn. We've got the Democrats with the nationalists, and we've got the communists here with the Chinese communists, which means they have to be a little careful in how they go about sort of handing over territory. For instance, if the communists were to simply move out of the hex here and the fascists were next in line for a player turn, then obviously the Japanese could move in before the nationalists would have an opportunity to do that. That's something that you don't see in a regular World in Flames game, because when it's the Allies' turn, the Chinese communist units are moving the same as the same time as the nationalists, so the communists can move out, the nationalists can move in before the fascists have an opportunity to do that. Now, in this case, if the Democrats can't enter the hex here anyway, but I think later on in this particular turn, because of the way that the initiative fell, you'll see that they will be able to bring these troops into here and have the communists shorten up their line a little bit, giving them a little stronger defensive strength here in the north. Now, the one other sort of point of concern for the Chinese is that their line is not quite complete. We still have this coastal hex down here in the mountains. One of the problems they're looking at is that below this blue weather line here, this is North Monsoon, and it is rain down there. So any unit which moves into this hex is going to be turned face down. Now, the Canton militia here can reach there, and they'd be inverted. That in itself is not a huge problem, except for the fact that with rain, the supply lines are reduced by a hex, which means if they move there, they'll be out of supply. Being black print, that's going to drastically reduce their defense strength and make it easy, or much easier, for the Japanese to actually mount some sort of successful attack on them. So the Chinese are in a bit of a quandary here, whether they go ahead and risk that or if they just stand pat and then give the opportunity for the Japanese to move in here, which will kind of allow them to potentially outflank the line here. The nationalists have enough troops to, fill in the line. Again, the issue is moving here, being inverted, face down, and then being out of supply. And I think what we're going to do is not do that. I think that would be worse, to try and push in here. So instead, I think what we're going to do is, in preparation for that, I think we will see this militia unit move here into Changsha. He's going to be inverted, even though it is a clear terrain hex. Basic cost is 2. However, again, movement costs are doubled because it's rain, so that's going to exceed the 3 movement factors that they have available. Now the question is, do we move anybody, filter anybody into the mountains here with the Shanghai militia? And I don't think so, at least not right now. I think that is going to be all we see the nationalists do, at least in this impulse. And that means that now we are ready for the fascists, and I think we'll probably keep it right here and do the Japanese first impulse of the turn. Now, for the Japanese, they've been launching 2 kind of separate attacks into China, one in the north and one in the south. They'd like to link those up and form a solid line here. Of course, also capturing Shanghai would be desirable, since it would give them a red factory, and they would also deny the Chinese a few factories in here as well. The issue in the south is that we've got bad weather here in the monsoon season, but they would like to grab this hex before the Chinese can occupy that, because it's going to be a lot easier to march in there versus having to attack some Chinese units in the mountains. The Japanese are still kind of hamstrung by selecting only combined action types, so that is exactly what they're going to do here. With the combined impulse, we have no port attacks, no naval air missions or naval movement. There's no naval combat, no strategic bombardment. We are going to start off with a ground strike, however, and the only bombers they have in theater are going to go 2, 4, 6. Now, there are 2 Chinese armies in that hex that are on the east side of the rivers here, and the Japanese would very much like to try to kill them and continue to attrit the Chinese forces, try to get the Chinese behind that attrition curve, if you will, where the Japanese are killing Chinese units faster than the Chinese can replace them. That will eventually wear down the Chinese and allow the Japanese to conquer China. And so rather than letting these 2, for Chinese nationalist units, these are 2 good armies, get behind the river line here, is something the Japanese want to avoid. So they're going to try to attack these guys. We're going to start off with a ground strike against them, see if we can invert any of them, get them face down, which will not only lock them in that hex for this turn, but give the Japanese some positive DRMs in the event of an attack. So we have 2 units. Now, the bombers are not very good, like most Japanese aircraft. Their attack factors are pretty poor. This is a 1, so I'm going to need a 1 for each of the target units. We'll roll both dice at once. The red die will be the top unit, and the green die will be the bottom unit. So we'll see how the ground strike goes. And as expected, we rolled a 7 and a 10, so those are both misses. That's going to be it for the ground strike. We'll rebase them. I don't think we put them quite all the way back up north. I think we'll land them here. They've got a nice range, being a naval bomber. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. By rebasing them here, that'll allow them to basically be able to help out pretty much anywhere along the front. Now, with the ground strikes out of the way, there's no rail movement, so now land movement. We are limited to just 3 land moves. And as mentioned, the Japanese do want to grab this hex, so they're going to go ahead and move the Hiroshima militia here into the hex. That's going to invert them because it's a mountain terrain with a cost of 4, then doubled to 8 because of the rain. And then, in order to safeguard the port here, which is basically the only supply point for the entire southern front, if you will, for the Japanese here, they're going to go ahead and slide the militia back out of the mountains there. That's 2 of their 3 land moves. And the final one, they're going to bring this infantry army across the river here into this hex. And we have no air transport, no debark, no invasions or paradrops, but now we have land combat, and the Japanese are going to go ahead and attack the hex here from these 3 hexes. Now, the hex with the headquarters here is across the river, so these 2 units will be halved. That's a 10, which could be halved to a 5. And we'll add to that the 8 here is 13, and the 8 here is a total of 21. There are 7 defending factors, so it's a 3-to-1 right now. And for the Japanese, the big question is, do they commit some offensive HQ support? And I think ultimately they will go ahead and do that. 3-to-1 is not a great odds column to be on, so this +1 will effectively make it like a 4-to-1 attack. But the 3-to-1 +1, now the Chinese could respond with Chang here, but because we have 3 reorg points versus 1 reorg point, even if Chang does commit defensive HQ support, that's going to reduce it to a total of 2 reorg points, which will round up. It'll be half, it'll be +0.5, which is going to round to a +0.1. So even if Chang does try to provide defensive HQ support, it still would not remove the +1 that the Japanese are going to get. And the question for the Chinese now is assault or blitzkrieg table, and so far they've been choosing the assault table, and it's worked out pretty well for them. They've been able to, even when they lose a hex, they've still been able to invert all the Japanese, or at least half of the Japanese attackers, and really bring any Japanese advances to a halt for that turn, buying them time, which is what the Chinese are looking to do, at least right now. So they're going to continue that strategy of choosing the assault table. So we're looking at a 3-to-1 +1 on the assault table. This is not a very good attack for the Japanese. They need to roll a 3 just to inflict any losses on the defenders, and really they're going to need a 4 just to come out even on it. A 6 or better will take the hex, so they do have a 50-50 chance of taking the hex. Now, so far we've seen the Japanese roll very poorly. Let's see what happens now. And things may be looking up for them. That's a 7. Let's see, we rolled a 10, a 7, and now another 7 here, this impulse for the Japanese. So the 7 + 1 on the assault table is going to give us an 8. We bring the table in here, you can see the 3-to-1 column and an 8. It's actually no losses for the Japanese, which is great. The Chinese are going to lose 1 step, and then the other, or 1 unit, and the other unit is going to be shattered, which means it's going to go on to the production circle as a reinforcement to arrive next turn, because they do have a they are in supply and they have a valid line of retreat. So we will go ahead and kill the 3-2, and then we'll take the 4-2 here and place him on the production circle. Now, the Japanese are able to move into the hex. However, as you saw, they are going to all be inverted. They needed to roll a, if they rolled an 8 or higher, they would have been able to keep at least half of their troops face up. So once again, the Chinese are trading lives for time, and the central portion of the Japanese army in China is now going to be inverted for the balance of the turn. But it was a bit costly because, as you see, the Chinese did lose 1 unit, and they've got another unit off the map until the reinforcement phase of next turn. And I think with that 1 land combat, we have no more air rebases, and there's no reorganization to do, at least this turn. So that's going to wrap it up for the first Japanese impulse here in Asia. Now let's head back to Europe and see what the fascists over there are doing. Now here in Europe, the European fascists, we'll start with Germany. Germany is just shifting a few units around internally. Here you can see they have now a couple of infantry corps deployed on the border with Netherlands. Rundstedt is kind of making his way back here towards the west. Again, they're doing this very slowly. They don't want to move more than a single oil-dependent unit, and therefore causing them to have to pay some oil as a result, and they figure they have time. They're in no big hurry. It's going to be, should be a nice long turn here in the summer with good weather. The Italians really are kind of standing pat, which means we've got to go take a look and see what the nationalists are doing down in Spain. Over in Spain, it is now or never for Franco and the nationalists. Over the last several turns, we've seen them start to gain the upper hand, but they really don't have a decisive advantage yet. And moreover, what slim edge they do have is on the clock. The Republicans are slated to receive some substantial reinforcements in July, August. So if the nationalists are going to break this thing wide open in their favor, they're going to have to do something rather dramatic this turn. Now, they are somewhat hamstrung by the Italian activity limits, and we've got no port attacks, no naval air missions, no naval movement, no strategic bombardment, but we are going to start off with a ground strike. And the nationalists are going to fly their bombers in 1, 2, 3 into the hex here, and the Republicans will then go ahead and fly their interceptors against those, which will then allow the nationalists to fly their fighters to intercept the interceptors. So we have another air battle here in the skies over Spain. Let's go resolve this and see if the bombers can get through to their targets. All right, here we have the fighter and bomber streams set up. This is a small air battle and should look familiar, as we've had some previous air battles similar under similar circumstances. You see the Republicans here have their fighter stream with their front fighter with an air-to-air rating of 3. The Nationalists have their fighter stream and bomber stream set up. Their front fighter is a 4, which means they will be rolling on the +1 column on the air-to-air table, while the Republicans will be rolling on the -1 column. So advantage to the Nationalists here in the skies. The Republicans are the non-phasing player, which means they are going to roll first, and we'll see what they can come up with here. And they do not roll very well at all. That 11 is a defender, it's a DC, which is defender clears through any one bomber. So the defender, remember when we come to air-to-air combat, whoever is actually rolling the dice is considered the attacker as far as interpreting the results, even if they're the non-phasing player. So in this instance, the Spanish Nationalists will be able to clear through their bomber. So the bombers do indeed get through. Now the Spanish fighters get a chance to shoot back on the +1 column. We'll see if they can roll any better. And not much, but I don't think this is going to result in any aircraft destroyed. A 10 on the +1 is also a DC. So defender clears through any one bomber. The Republicans, of course, do not have any bombers to clear through. So now we've completed the first round. The question is, do the Nationalists want to stay and continue to fight it out with a +1 to -1 advantage? They've already done their job with the bombers getting through. So the Nationalists could abort at this point and consider this a successful air combat, or they can try and press their advantage and maybe shoot down the Republican aircraft, making things a little bit easier in the future. It's not a real big advantage. It's a couple column advantage. They'd have to roll either a 16 or higher or a 6 or less on the 2d10 in order to destroy the Republican. And of course, that would be dependent upon the Republicans actually sticking around. So you know, the Spanish Nationalists are feeling pretty good. They're going to elect to stay. The Republicans really don't see any point in staying here. They're at a disadvantage. They weren't able to get to the bombers. They would like to preserve their Air Force for future missions. So they're going to go ahead and abort back to base. So that's going to resolve the air combat here. Now we will head back to Spain and resolve the bombing attack. Alright, you can see both of the fighters have returned to base and been turned face down. We've got the bombers now, see if they can make this a successful bombing attack for the Nationalists. We have 3 units in the hex. We've got this garrison division, we have the infantry corps, and we have Azania. So 3 targets. We're going to have to roll the dice 3 times. I'll roll the first 2. The red one will work top to bottom in the hex. So the first result will be against the division, the second one against Azania, and then we'll roll it a 3rd time for the infantry corps. Red die will be the top unit, and the green die will be the middle unit, Azania here. And with a tactical factor of 3, we're going to need a 3 or less on either die in order to turn the target face down. And we received a 1. And a 6, and then one last one for the infantry corps, and that is a 9. So about as expected. We did get 1 out of 3. That's going to be good enough to give us a +1, which is not quite what the Nationalists were hoping for. They would have liked to have gotten at least 1 more on there, because the odds in this upcoming attack are not going to be very good at all. And if they had only gotten 1, they would really have preferred to have gotten Azania, the headquarters. So with that, we will move on to land movement. The Nationalists are going to use their 3 available land moves, all in the southwest, to try to improve their position there. The Cavalry Corps is going to go 2-4 and capture that resource from the Republicans. We'll have the militia slide here, and we're going to bring the 5th Infantry Corps 1, 2, 3 into there. So with the 3 land moves done, we have no debarking of units, no evasions or paradrops. Brings us to land combat. And this is kind of the big attack. If this succeeds, it should put the Nationalists in a very good position. If not, we're looking at an extended stalemate. barring any big intervention, I think, from some foreign powers. But the Nationalists are going to attack with these two hexes on Azania's hex. Here we do have a river that this hex is going to be attacking across from. Now the attacking forces have a total of 11 in this hex, and they have 11 in this hex. That's going to be halved to 5.5. That gives them 16.5. That's going to round up to 17 attack factors. And the defenders, as we saw, we have 1 here, plus 4 and 3 gives us a total of 8 defensive factors. So a 17 to 8 is a 2-to-1. And we are going to have a +1 by virtue of 1 face-down defender in the hex. The question now is offensive HQ support or not. If we lend offensive HQ support, it would potentially give us a +1. However, Azania is face up, and he would be able to provide defensive HQ support, thus canceling that out. That would also mean both headquarters would be inverted at the end of the combat regardless of the results. Meaning that if the Nationalists do get a partial success here, where they may take the hex or kill a couple of the units, they're probably not going to be able to keep their units face up with the headquarters face down. That's going to kind of put a real damper on them being able to exploit any mild success, if you want to call it, in this hex. So it would be an all or nothing thing here for the Spanish Nationalists if they do commit the HQ. If they don't commit the HQ, we're looking at a 2-to-1 +1, which is really, it's not great. They would need an 8 or better to clear the hex. And if they forego offensive HQ support and Azania does provide defensive HQ support, then that's going to nullify that +1 that they currently have. So I guess what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and have Franco provide offensive HQ support. Like I said, this is kind of an all or nothing attack here for the Nationalists. If they roll well enough, they could bust this whole front wide open and really put the Republicans in a bad situation. And knowing that, the Republicans are going to go ahead and commit Azania with his defensive HQ support as well. So now technically neither of those HQs should be face down until the end of the battle, the resolution of it, but I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. So we're looking ultimately here at a 2-to-1 +1. Like I said, they're going to have to roll a 7 or better in order to kill at least 2 units, but an 8 or better on the die. That's not an 8 total, so that's an 8 +1 to give them a 9 in order to actually clear the hex. So only a 30% chance of this succeeding. We'll see how things go. Here's the big roll. Wow. Somebody's living right. So that 9 +1 is a 10. And if we look here, not only is that going to be good enough to, let's see, we come across here, 2-to-1. We've got 2 units destroyed, and the third is going to be shattered, but also 50% of the attackers will remain face up. This is an excellent result for the Nationalists, about as good as they could have hoped for. So we will go ahead, and the Republicans will destroy the division there. They will also destroy the infantry corps, and then Azania will be shattered. He does have, he's in supply, he's got a way to retreat, so he will end up on the production spiral to arrive as a reinforcement next turn, which means the Republicans are going to be getting a lot of troops next turn. But in the meantime, the Nationalists will be able to enter that hex, and they will have 50% of their troops remaining face up. So what we probably will do is we do that, and then the garrison corps, the garrison division, and Franco get turned face down, and that's going to leave those 3 units still face up, and they've managed to punch a hole clean through the Republican lines here. They are now at the gates of Madrid. Let me go ahead and dispose of the Republicans here, and we will, I think, move on to, yes, we've got no air rebases, no reorganization. So now we will advance the impulse marker, roll weather for the, oh, I'm sorry, not yet. We've got to do the communist impulse coming up next. So let me go ahead and take care of this, and we'll move on to the communists. Well, fortune favors the bold, as they say, and that certainly seemed to be the case there in Spain. That was a very low odds attack, but thanks to that nice high die roll, it worked spectacularly well for the nationalists. Now, turning to Asia, the European communists really had nothing to do over there. The Soviets are very thin on the ground in Europe, actually. But here in Asia, they do have just one move here, just nothing much other than shuffling that mech corps along the border there. This, though, is where days of decision differs fairly substantially from just a regular WiF game. When we look at the Chinese, and we've got the two Chinese factions, which now no longer both move and fight during the Chinese impulse or the Allied impulse. We now have to split that, and the nationalists were hoping to get their units that were east of the river line here back into Changchao here, and that would allow the communists to either shorten their line and sort of beef up the defenses here in the north, or maybe move something potentially even into reserve. The issue now, though, is, and we would be able to do that because the communists could simply slide this Lanchow militia back, and the Democrats have the next impulse, which means the nationalists will be able to move someone into this hex before the Japanese will be able to do anything about it. The problem is the Chinese did lose. They had one unit destroyed. They had the other unit shattered. So they'll get that one infantry army back next turn. I think we are going to go ahead and I'm going to do this. Are we going to... Yeah, I think we'll leave this as is. I think the Nationalists will go ahead and slide up there, even though it'll thin them out a little bit here in the center. With the Japanese face down here in this region, the threat of any further Japanese attacks this turn is pretty much null. So that's going to do it for the Communists. We'll go ahead and roll weather for the next batch of impulses, and I think we'll stay here since we're already in Asia and take care of the Democrats, which means basically the Chinese nationalists. Well, believe it or not, the weather roll was a 1, which gives us snow in the Arctic, storm in North Temperate, rain in the Mediterranean, and then storm in North Monsoon, South Monsoon, and South Temperate. The impulse marker is going to go up 2 boxes after each impulse, but we do have a +2 to the weather roll next time around. So this should be just kind of a freak late spring storm, and then we'll pass on. So I think everyone should be able to count on at least one additional impulse after this current bad weather impulse, where not much is going to happen. Now we're here in Asia with the Chinese. The weather is bad. They really would rather not move a unit in during this stormy weather with the doubled terrain cost because it inverts them. But again, it's not as if the Japanese are going to be able to mount any actual attacks. They just would feel better knowing that they've got somebody in this hex rather than some freak occurrence where if they decide to wait another impulse before moving a unit in just to keep him face up, and then next thing you know they find out that the Japanese have beaten them to the punch. So that would be very bad for the Chinese. So they'll go ahead and just slide him in and turn him face down. Here in the south, you know, the Japanese went ahead and grabbed that mountain hex. That the Chinese line is not complete. We still have this hole here that the Japanese can continue to ooze through. Now they're not going to do it this turn because the leading unit is face down, and with this hex being mountains, anybody who enters that hex in the bad weather is going to be inverted. But rather than taking the chance of maybe the fascists winning initiative in July, August, And going first and beating the punch here, the Chinese will go ahead and extend their line, even though it's going to invert both of these units. At least the units are in supply. So yes, he's face down, but he's able to draw supply here from Canton, so he retains his defense strength of 4 instead of dropping it to a 1. Same thing here in the mountains. They're being supplied from Changsha here. So the Chinese have reestablished a complete line now, at least as far as practical. Up here in the north, you see there's still a way around, but you're talking deserts and then mountains. So the Japanese don't really have the headquarters that supply assets in place to extend that far. So for all practical purposes, the Chinese have reformed a defensive line. It is, however, incredibly thin, as you can see. So that's something they're going to want to address here in the coming turns as quickly as they can. The bad weather in the south should continue, I think, for another turn at least, maybe 2, which might buy them some time down there. Plus, the Japanese are hampered by the fact that they have no headquarters down here. They can only draw supply from the port right now, which means adjacent hexes. So, with the second Chinese nationalist impulse out of the way, I'm just looking over here at see if there's anything. Well, we're going to head back to Spain for sure, since the Republicans are running under the French activity limits. So let's go ahead and head back to Spain. We'll see what options the Republicans have to deal with the huge problem they've just been handed. Well, the Republicans are in a bit of a bad way now. They've got this rather sizable nationalist army right here adjacent to Madrid. They only have a single defender in Madrid. Now it's their best land unit with a 5 strength. However, as you can see, the nationalists have plenty of troops face up and wandering around that would be able to mount a decent, at least a decent enough attack on that single defender. You know, the question is, do they pull the Madrid militia back in? If they do, you know, the Madrid militia is sitting in some lovely mountainous terrain here. It just gives them a nice defensive strength of 8. They'd be giving that up, but I don't know that they can really afford to leave Madrid with just a single defender right now. And of course, this is also going to have further implications when it comes to the reinforcements that are arriving next turn. If Madrid is fully stacked, they may not be able to place any reinforcements in Madrid, which will complicate things down the road. So maybe they do want to leave the militia out here, but do they take that chance to give the nationalists the opportunity to actually take Madrid, which would be kind of disastrous for the Republicans? Now, they don't have to worry about it. This impulse, because of the bad weather, it's rain in the Med, which means movement costs are doubled, and there's a 1 column odd shift to the left for any attacks. I don't think the nationalists would be in a hurry to make an attack this impulse. Although, let's see, what do they have sitting here? They've got 6, 11. They do have 12 right here. They could probably bring another 1.5 across the river. 13, that's 14 to 5. That's just shy of 3 to 1. But again, with a single unit defending Madrid, it would only take them, even on a 2 to 1, you know, just a 5. So 2 to 1 be shifted to the 3 to 2 because of the rain. A 6 would take the hex. So it'd still be a 50-50 shot if the Republicans don't withdraw the militia into the city, and I think that's too big a risk to allow to happen. So they are going to go ahead and withdraw the militia there. Now the question is, what do they do with their forces here in the east? The units here, if they pull back next to Madrid, they're going to be pulling back. They can't get to Madrid because the zone of control is going to stop them here, and it's going to stop them here. Plus, with the bad weather, movement point costs are doubled. It'd be 2-6 to get to there, and they only have 4 movement points anyway. If they pull back next to Madrid, they're going to be leaving this mountainous terrain and leaving themselves much weaker, you know, defensively speaking. And I think the Nationalists would be happy to keep destroying Republican units and get them behind that attrition curve. But where they're sitting right now isn't doing a whole heck of a lot of good. And again, with the rain down here and the double movement cost, they're not going to go anywhere terribly quickly. There's not really much they can do. I guess maybe if they go anywhere, I guess we could pull them back here. That'll keep them face up, and it'll basically strengthen the outer defenses here of Valencia, which again only has a single unit. But I don't think, being in the mountains there, I don't think the Nationalists are going to be a terribly big threat to Valencia in the immediate future. So I think that's basically all that the Republicans are going to be able to do. That's their 3 land moves, which is what they're allowed under the French combined action limits. So you can see that little gap has basically just evaporated the whole northern half of the Republican defensive line there in short order. So that's going to wrap it up for the Democrats. One thing that the Commonwealth did do is they had a transport here in Gibraltar, and they sailed it back to the UK there. You can see it's face down, so it'll be done for this turn. And anything else we're missing with the Democrats? No, I don't think so. The marker is going to move up 2 boxes. It'll now head over to the fascists. There's no chance to end the impulse here, and neither will there be after the fascist impulse. So let's see how the Nationalists decide to follow up their stunning success from last impulse. Well, the focus here in Europe remains Spain. The Nationalists are looking to definitely follow up from their victory in that big attack here east of Madrid. Unfortunately, the rainy weather is going to slow that down somewhat. They will go ahead and have the cavalry move 2-4 here to Cartagena and capture that. Let's see, that's 1. They will bring their artillery forward 1 hex here at a cost of 2. That's their 2nd land move, and the last land move they have, I think they're going to go ahead and move 5th Corps over here. Actually, no, I think they may do is the militia there. They're going to have to invert them because of the doubled terrain costs with the rain. But what that effectively does, mask, well, why are they doing that? It's kind of an odd move. They're concerned about the cavalry and, of course, the fast division here. The Spanish, or the Nationalist cavalry here in Cartagena has a ZOC extending here. This is going to put a ZOC here, which will prevent these guys from coming out this way and potentially recapturing that resource there or causing any other sort of havoc up in this area. So the Nationalists are going to have to be content to wait at least 1 more impulse before potentially getting an attack here on Madrid itself. So not much in the way of developments here thanks to the weather. The Germans have just been shifting some armor units further to the west. You can see they railed an armored corps into western Germany here, and Rundstedt has continued to move slowly towards the west as well. I think that means we are ready to take a look at the Japanese and see if they're going to do anything over in Asia this impulse, which I kind of doubt given the number of units they have face down and the terrible weather that they're looking at over there. As expected, the Japanese are really not going to do much of anything at all. They'll just basically slide this cavalry division down a hex into the headquarters hex, and that is, that is going to do it, sadly enough. Now we'll go ahead and we'll move the impulse marker up another 2 boxes for to the communist impulse now. And actually, looks like it's a 0, so since no one passed, there's not going to be any modifier to the die roll, and it's going to be impossible to roll a 0, so the turn will not end after this communist impulse either. And really the only thing the communists are going to be doing, let's see, forest, and the Pacific is a 3, so that's going to be him there, and that is going to do it. So now it's back for another weather roll, which the weather will be better. Hopefully it'll be much improved, but we've got that +2 to the die roll, so we don't have to worry about a repeat of really bad weather here, which means we should see some more activity in Spain, and may end up starting to roll for end of turn here. We'll see.
Well, we've gone from one extreme to the other with the weather roll. We rolled a 1 for the second set of impulses, and this time we rolled a 10, which makes it fair, or rather fine, everywhere. The impulse marker is going to advance just one box after each of the impulses, and there's going to be no modifier to the next weather roll. Now, the Democrats, as we can see here, with the Republicans in Spain, they don't have a lot of good options. They're kind of coalescing around the 3 cities that they still maintain control of, and they simply lack the firepower really to go after even some of the more vulnerable nationalists. Now they could slide down here, maybe let's see, what do we have? I think a grand total of seven attack strength here in this hex. They could slide down and get a 3-to-1 attack here on the cavalry in Cartagena, but 3-to-1 still has a pretty decent chance of inflicting casualties on the attackers. They would also stand a good chance of being turned face down. And what would they ultimately achieve? Well, they would recapture Cartagena. They would kill a single nationalist unit, and they would find themselves out here face down, more than likely in a clear hex, making them a lot more vulnerable than they are right now. I think for that reason, the Republicans are basically sort of going into hunker down mode. They're just going to try and form a few hedgehogs here and await the wave of reinforcements that they know is coming soon. As far as the other Democrats go, China is actually in as good a position as she's going to be able to get to this turn. She has no reason or desire to really do anything with her troops. And of course, Commonwealth and France are content to sit where they are, which means that the democracies, having talked things over, are going to go ahead and pass. And we're going to have all of the Democrats pass, which means we're going to have a -2 to the end of turn die roll. The number is currently sitting on a 0. So thanks to the -2, there is a chance, it's not a great chance, but there is a chance that the turn will end right here. They really see no reason to prolong the turn, since there's not going to be anything else they can really do to improve it, and they see no reason to give the fascists any more good weather to do something with than they really need to. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at this end of turn die roll. Again, it's a -2. The number is a 0, so just a 1 or a 2 will result in end of turn. Otherwise, we'll go on to the fascists, and that's a 10. So the turn does continue, which means we have the fascists coming up next with some good weather, both in Asia and Spain. So let's see what they decide to do with it. Now the nationalists are looking at some good weather again here in Spain. Hopefully that will continue and they'll get several more impulses. They are, again, restricted to just 3 land moves. We don't have any naval or air activity since the entire Air Force is face down and the Navy really doesn't have anything to do at this point. So we'll skip right to the land movement, and they are going to go ahead and occupy these mountains with those 2 units, and I think they're going to spend their last unit to move, sending the Sevilla militia to the east here. Anything else? I think that's going to do it, which means we can now jump over to Asia and take a look at the Japanese. Well, the good weather in North Monsoon came a couple of impulses too late for the Japanese. If they had gotten this a little bit earlier in the turn, they probably could have made a little bit better progress and potentially disrupted the entire southern end of the Chinese line here, but that was not to be. And so the only thing they've got really to do is they're just going to push this militia unit into China here. And that's going to do it for the fascists. Now the fascists, again, the turn end number is now a 1, so there is actually a chance for the turn to end. And I guess we'll go ahead and roll that and see if they manage to shoot themselves in the foot here. They do not, with the 3, which means we're going to go ahead and go right into the communist impulse. And as you might imagine, with really nothing that the communists have to do that's very pressing, and knowing that an extended turn does nothing but help the fascists, the communists are going to pass as well, which means they are going to they're going to get a -2 on their end of turn die roll. The end of turn number is, I believe is it 2 now? No, it is still 1. However, with the -2, this means a 3 or less for the communists will end the turn. See if they can disappoint the fascist hopes, and they cannot with a 9. So back to rolling weather. We'll see if it stays good for the fascists, which at this point, really the Japanese are kind of shut down for the turn here in China. So we're really just looking at developments over in Spain for the balance of the turn. So we'll roll the weather, see if it's good, and probably go straight into the Democrats' impulse. And with no real changes to speak of, I would expect they are going to pass again. But I'll take a look at that once we get there and see exactly what the weather is going to be.
Weirdly enough, the weather die roll here for this set of impulses was a 5, which means we've had a 1, a 10, and a 5 for our last 3 weather rolls, which I think turns out to be an average of about 5.33 on the weather die roll, which is, I think, average or expected, which is weird since we've experienced both extremes of the spectrum here. But I don't know, maybe some of the more math inclined of you out there could educate me on whether or not my perceptions are correct. So we've had average weather with this die roll of a 5. The only thing that changes is we have rain again in North Monsoon, which is expected this time of year. And with that, we are going to go ahead and have the Democrats pass yet again. Now the end of turn number now though is a 2, so with a -2, a 4 or less will be enough to end the turn. See if we can make that happen. And unfortunately they roll another 10. I think that's 2 10s in a row for them, plus a 9 for the communist end of turn. So the passing for the Democrats have been about as successful as the Republican defenses this turn. What that means is we are now up to the fascists, and the question here is, can they get an attack in here on Madrid before the end of the turn? Yes, they can get an attack, but can they get a decent attack? They've got 12 here and 5 here is 17. If we slide this guy up here, which I think we're going to go ahead and do, that's 1, 2, 3. So we've got 12, 17, 21 to 9 now. Even if we throw in, let's see, the only other face-up units are here, here, and here. These 2 can't make it. The Sevilla militia is going to be attacking across a river, so it would add 1.5. So we said 12, 17, 21, 20, about 22.5, 23 to 9. That's still only a 2 to 1. And while it's certainly possible to succeed there, they would need an 8 or better, similar to their big attack earlier this turn. I don't know if they really want to push their luck, because there's a good chance that they end up just killing more of their own units than they do of the Republican defenders. Whereas if they are patient and they wait until next turn, looks like with Madrid fully stacked, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to add any defenders to here and increase the defense there. So if they're patient and wait till next turn, they'll have more units here face up. They'll have their Air Force back face up again, which could potentially invert the defenders, giving them some +1 or potentially even a +2. I think the argument for waiting until next turn is much stronger than taking a risk and trying to follow up with an immediate attack this turn. So we've got 2 more land moves to do. I think we're going to slide the Sevilla militia down here, and then we're going to have the cavalry go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, why not? Move them in next to Malaga there. So now the only cities that the Republicans control are Malaga here on the southern coast, Valencia in the east, and Madrid. Now, because Madrid has 2 factory stacks, that actually still means they're producing at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They do have 5 production points. The problem the Republicans are going to run into, though, I think, is being able to place their reinforcements as they build them, because we can see here Madrid is fully stacked, and it's kind of locked in with enemy ZOCs. Malaga has room for 1 full-sized unit, but again, they've got some ZOC issues here. Valencia can take a unit. If the Nationalists can get somebody in here, it's really going to start to make life difficult for getting Republican reinforcements on map. So we'll see what happens. That's probably at least another impulse or 2 down the road. The Japanese really, I don't see anything that they are going to be doing here, so we'll go ahead and roll for the end of turn for the fascists, and this is also a 2. So a 2 or less, and the fascists will have ended it. I think they're content to see it end. The roll, however, is a 5. We can see a 5, which means it's going to continue for the communists, who are going to turn around and just pass immediately themselves. This is a 2 -2, so again a 4 or less for the communists to pass and end the turn, and we see a 7, so it is the turn that refuses to die at this point. Let's just roll for weather real quick while we're here. We've got a 2. Yes, a 2. That's going to be not very good weather. It's going to be storm in the Arctic, rain in North Temperate, fair in the Med, storm in North Monsoon, rain in South Monsoon, South Temperate. It's going to go up 2 boxes after each impulse, and there is going to be a +2. I have a funny feeling that, barring some really high end of turn dice rolls, this is probably going to be the last set of impulses for this turn. Let me go ahead and adjust the marker on the track. I'll lay out the new weather markers, and if anything happens, I will I'll break back into it, but otherwise I'm just going to probably try and wrap up this turn, and we'll pick back up again once the turn has in fact ended. Well, immediately after taking care of sort of the record-keeping stuff, we went right into the Democrat impulse, which was, again, a pass. They needed a 5 or less, and that is exactly what they rolled. So the turn ended up ending immediately for all intents and purposes. I've done the partisan roll. There's no partisans to worry about this turn. We've done U.S. entry. That's kind of rolled into the days of decision portion of the game. I've done the return to base final reorganization, which means the only thing we have left to do is production for each of the countries. So I'll get going on that, and once that's complete, I'll show you what everybody ended up building, and that's going to wrap up the May-June 1939 turn. All right, we have the production wrapped up here for May-June 1939, and something interesting to point out, the Axis powers, or the fascist powers, are currently being outbilled this turn 17 build points to 35. Now that does include the communists who built 7 build points worth of equipment. So if you back that out to just the democracies, it's 18 to 28. And then if you take the US out of that, that's going to drop that down to 23. So the fascists are at a noticeable production deficit right now, and unless and until they start reaching out and grabbing more resources in factories, I don't see that situation improving, which means that the longer the fascists delay getting to war and doing what they need to do, I think the stronger they're going to find the Democrats to be. So what did everybody end up building? Well, the Italians, keep in mind that several powers just geared up last turn or the turn before. So many of the countries were and are in deficits, and even after their increased production and what they spent this turn, which was usually, in most cases, it was a lot less than what they are actually producing, in an effort to try and dig themselves out of this deficit. I don't think anybody was actually successful in doing that. I think Germany is sitting at -1 along with the Soviet Union, and they are the richest, so to speak, of the 8 major powers. The U.S., interestingly, is right now the deepest in debt at -10, followed by China at -6. The Italians aren't doing terribly well at -4, but they are slowly starting to get out from underneath that debt. And what they've done with that is build a single-engine land bomber for a cost of 2, and that's the only thing they built. Again, they're trying to get back at least to break even here and get out of debt. Germany built a pilot. They built an infantry corps, and they built a single-engine land bomber, much like the Italians did. That's going to run them a total of 7, 2, 3, and infantry corps there. And then finally, finishing off the fascist powers, the Japanese laid down a carrier. With the first cycle, they built or are training pilots. They built a carrier plane and also an infantry corps, and that ran them a total of 8 build points. For the communists, the Soviet Union is actually, well, they didn't quite overspend, but they spent pretty darn close to their production. They built an infantry headquarters and trained pilots for a total of 7. The Commonwealth built an armor headquarters. They are training a pilot, they are building a single-engine fighter, and they are commencing the second cycle of HMS Bonaventure, a light cruiser, and that cost them a grand total of 12. So they did actually overspend their production here by 1. They're producing 11, spent 12. The result is they are sitting at a -3 deficit right now. For the French built an infantry corps. They began training pilot, and they built a single-engine fighter. And the pilot will go here. That cost them a total of 7. China, which needs all the help it can get, they built an infantry corps and a cavalry division. That was a total of 4, which is what they're now producing. The problem is they were at -6 as far as a deficit goes. They produced 4, bringing up to -2. Even this minimum build of a single army and a division dropped them back down to -6. So it's going to take them quite a while to break out of this deficit they find themselves in, if they'll even ever be able to do that, because barring, well, the only way they're really going to be able to realistically increase their production with the Japanese invading their homeland like they are is through gearing up their production multiple as well as managing to hold on to the resources and factories they currently have, which is going to be a tall order. Rounding out the major powers, the United States, which thanks to its gear up, is producing 10 build points each turn. However, like I said, they were at minus 15. That brought them up to minus 5. They are looking to get out of the hole here, so they didn't really spend too much. They started the second cycle of USS Washington, and they began training a pilot, and that was a total of 5, which ended up putting them at minus 10. So they are still at least one full turn's worth of production away from getting out of that deficit. Now, when it comes to the Spanish, the nationalists have nothing in their force pool, so they are building a pilot, and we're going to go ahead and use a Chinese pilot marker, knowing that the Chinese can't build pilots until the U.S. entry option is essentially selected. Now, the Republicans have 5 build points, but they are kind of wasting one, unfortunately. They have an infantry corps for 3, and they have a garrison division for 1, for a total of 4. They do have a twin-engine bomber in there with a cost of 3, and they have an artillery unit waiting to be built with a cost of 4. So perhaps over the next turn or two, assuming they can at least hold on to what they currently hold and control, they may be able to get those units on the production circle. But that is going to wrap it up for production, and that is also going to wrap it up for this May-June 1939 turn. It was a big turn for the nationalists. They've got another turn of presumably good weather, potentially a long turn for them if things go well, and this could be the decisive turn in the Spanish Civil War coming up here, where the nationalists, if they can take Madrid, I think at that point it'll just be a matter of time before they wear down the Republicans. So stay tuned for that. Until then, take care, and we'll see you.